Hey guys, I'm going to work through these compound interest problems. I'm going to do the first one pretty slowly because it's the first one we've done together, and then I'll zip through the next two. But I want to kind of explain each step on this first one pretty slowly, pretty carefully for you guys. All right, so here's the question. So Jill deposits $4,000 into an account. So we know that's our principal. That's how much you start with. Into an IRA, probably shouldn't say that, CD, some whatever, but it's fine, where it earns 2.8% interest. So first thing we see when you see that, that's our annual rate. It pays 2.8% per year. But then there's this wrinkle, this new part for this one. It says it's compounded monthly. So what that means is every month they look how much money is in her account and they give her a little bit of interest. They give her a 1/12 of this because they do it every month. But what's awesome about compound interest is that the interest she got from last month gets a little bit of interest. And so it grows faster than just simple interest. It's not just 2.8% of the 4,000. It grows a little bit exponentially because it's compounded every month. Okay, and then what will it be when she's 35? So she starts at 27.35. So that's 8 years. All right, so here we go. Here's what we know. We're going to write down each variable. The principal is $4,000. She invests $4,000 to start. Our rate, which isn't part of our formula, but I just want to write it so that we can make sure we convert it to a decimal. 2.8%, that's 0.028. And then this doesn't show up in our formula exactly either, but I need to know how many periods per year. How many times per year do they give us interest? So if it's compounded monthly, obviously that's 12 times a year that they give us interest, right? 12 months in a year. So they're going to give us interest 12 times each year. All right, this part is our formula, part of our formula. This is really key. So this is the periodic interest rate. Every time they check in at the end of the month and say, how much do you have? Let's give them interest. This is the interest rate that they give you. So it's the annual rate divided by the periods per year. So they're giving us 2.8% per year, but they divide it by 12 because they're giving it to us every month. And then how long is this investment? 35 minus 27 is 8 years. And again, this shows up in our formula. This doesn't, this doesn't, this does, this doesn't. And then here's the key. This N is really just how many times during the life of this investment do they give us interest. So if they give us interest 12 times a month for 8 years, how many times are they going to give us interest? So it's always the periods per year times the number of years. So 12 times a year they give us interest for 8 years. That's 96 different times they calculate the interest, okay, every month for 8 years. So N is how many times you get interest, and it's 96 times for this one. Okay, here we go. So all I really need is the principal, the interest rate, and the number of interest payments paid out. Here we go. Here's our formula. The future value, the value of this at the end of the term, is equal to the principal times 1. That means obviously we get to keep the money we invested, plus here's our interest. The periodic interest rate, and then to the power, just this in parentheses, the 1 plus I, to the power of N, how many times they give us interest, okay? Now, formula is always given to us, but you need to understand what each letter represents. Future value, what it's worth at the end. P, principal. I is the periodic interest rate, and N is how many times they give us interest. All right, here we go. So let's plug in what we know. So our principal was $4,000. That's how much she invested, times 1 plus, and you could do this, simplify it, but don't. Just leave it. You can put it all into the calculator at once. 0.028 divided by 12. That's our periodic interest rate every month. And then to the power of how many times they give us interest, 96. All right. And then you should, especially if you have one of these sweet calculators, but even if you don't, on your phone calculator, if you do the scientific calculator, you should type all this in all at once. 4,000 times parentheses 1 plus 0.028 over 12, close parentheses, to the power, which sometimes looks like that caret symbol, to the power, slide that over, you can see, 96. So type all that in all at once, and you should get this answer, $5,002, and we'll round it to the nearest cent, nearest penny, 98 cents. Okay, so $5,002.98. She started with 4,000. She ended up with just over 5,000. Okay, so walking through each of these six variables and then plugging in the important ones into the formula, that's the way that we're going to do this. Okay, all right, I'll zip through the next one a little quicker. So number 2, the investment company pays 6% interest. That's amazingly high. Compounded semi-annually. So what that means is twice a year. So they're going to give us interest twice each year, every 6 months, another way to say it. All right, so we deposit $10,000. That's our principal. How much will it be worth in 5 years? All right, so here we go. Here's what I need to know. The principal, $10,000. The rate, this is the annual rate. How much interest do they give me or charge me, depending, per year? So this is 0.06, 6%. Make sure you move that decimal point 2 places every time. All right, periods per year. How many times do they give us interest per year? Semi-annually, twice a year, so just 2. Not very much. Interest for the period. So what is my periodic interest rate? How much are they giving me when they calculate my interest twice a year? So it's the annual rate, 0.06, divided by the periods per year. This is, the interest rate is always just these two numbers divided. And then my term, the time, how long do we leave it in this investment? 5 years. And so my N is how many times per year multiplied by how many years. So I get 10 payments of interest. Okay, twice a year for 5 years. So future value, here we go, equals the principal times 1 plus the periodic interest rate to the power of N, how many payments they give me. All right, 10,000, 1 plus 0.06 over 2 to the power of 10. And then again, just grab your calculator, plug all that in at once, 13,439.16. All right, the key is obviously knowing the principal, figuring out periods per year, making sure you get the periodic rate and the N correct. Okay, how much interest do they give me each time they give it to me, and how many times total do they give me interest? All right, last question is in reverse, not in reverse, but it's the bad kind. It's where we're borrowing, so we're the one paying the interest. All right, so Yuri borrows 4,000. Annual interest rate, this is my R, 4.95%, compounded quarterly, so 4 times a year, right? They're going to give us interest every 3 months, 4 times a year. And it's going to take him 3 years to pay back that interest. All right, so here's what we know. Principal, how much is Yuri borrowing? 4,000. Annual interest rate, change it to a decimal, 0.0495. Periods per year is 4. It's quarterly. They're going to charge us interest every quarter. So there's 4 interest calculations per year. So my quarterly, my periodic rate is the annual rate divided by however many times they give me interest, 4, or charge me interest, 4. So 0.049 divided by 4. The term, how long is this loan? 3 years. And so how many total interest payments, interest calculations are they going to calculate? So N is periods per year, 4 interest calculations a year times 3 years. So they're going to charge me interest 12 different times over the life of this loan. All right, here we go. So my future value, what am I going to have to pay back, or what does Yuri have to pay back at the end of the 3 years? So it's the principal, how much he borrowed, times 1 plus the periodic rate, all to the power of how many times they pay interest. And just to make sure, as you're doing this on your calculator, the 1 plus I is being raised to the N, but not the P. So if you have a great scientific calculator, you should be able to type all this in at once. But if you don't, do from the sort of inside out. So start with 1 plus I, raise it to the nth power, and then last step would be to multiply times P. So if you can't do it all in one step, save this for the end. All right, 4,000 times 1 plus 0.0495 divided by 4, all to the 12th power. And when you're done with that, Yuri owes $4,636.14. All right. And then in all three of these problems, we did exactly the same formula. The last question isn't too challenging for this problem. It just says, over the life of this loan, how much interest did Yuri end up paying total? Okay. So if you need a formula for this, the interest is just the future value, how much total we had to pay back, or if you're investing, how much total it's worth, minus how much you started with, the principal. That's all the interest is. You put in this much, you got out this much, so the rest had to be interest. So for this, Yuri ended up paying $46,36.14 minus the $4,000 that he borrowed, and so just subtract those two, and so the difference, $636.14, that is how much interest he paid.